Hey everyone, it's me, Krista Goins, the Resilient Teacher Mom, here homeschooling with Wyatt, right, Wyatt?
Yeah.
Yes, and so,
Mommy got some ingredients.
Mommy has some ingredients, and so with me turning in my first draft for my dissertation and the 150 pages of writing that I did within the last couple months, and conducted the research and analyzed the results, it's here, me getting to focus on the next step of life. So Wyatt's kind of giving you a clue of what we're, getting at. And so recently, it's kind of weird because a microschool isn't a homeschool option, and obviously me and him are home. And so that's how we ended up with the microschool option. But change is never easy for anyone. And when new options open up for, problems that exist, that's the whole thing. The landscape of problems, not everyone has the same problems. So if you go and you integrate into different communities, the problems are completely different. And in terms of our family, the school options that exist, both private and public, and even in the homeschool sector, doesn't always meet the goals we have as a family or, the time constraints. And so part of us, me and Ben, choosing to go homeschool is because we have so many kids. And with one diagnosed with ADHD right now, the thing he values the most, right? Why? What is the one thing you really, really miss from being homeschooled? What?
Being good.
Oh, that's what he's learning. But he misses friends. Why? Do you miss friends sometimes? Yeah. And that's because he came from a traditional setting, traditional setting meaning that you get up every morning, you go to a place, you're in a class, you have a teacher, you're in the same class, you have a teacher, and you have a school schedule. So he's used to being in a classroom. He's used to having a teacher. He's used to having classmates and friends to learn with. Well, everyone says, well, you have enough kids where you can replicate that, with their siblings. But if you ever been in a large family, you're so close, it hurts sometimes. And so sibling relationships are way different than peer relationships. And two, you know each other so well as siblings that sometimes you push each other's buttons out of pure boredom sometimes. And so you need the company of other peers to challenge your interests, to make you feel valid in a different way. Plus, in a family, we operate together based on, our schedule. And so it's sometimes like, we share chores, we share time, we share space. So we're going to take care of this house together. The boys share a bedroom, it's important that they take turns, it's important that they put their clothes in the hamper so that it's not flooded. So some of the choices that were made is just because of what we're responsible for together as a family. Now what Wyatt prefers is friends who just want to get to know Wyatt. Right, Wyatt? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He prefers that individual attention because he's in the space, he exists, and someone out there, a stranger, wants to get to know them. And so he has a little bit of that at co-op. He goes to co-op once a week. All of that is more so enrichment, so it's not going to hit his core academics. But for him, he hasn't really discovered a lot of his own interests, but he loves to learn. So he's, contrary to people's beliefs that kids are young, they're just babies. No, they're actually curious little beings. Hence why that character, Curious George, came into existence, is because in life, you grow because you're interested in learning. And so the world around us teaches us all sorts of lessons and things. And Wyatt is very inquisitive, just like the rest of his siblings, on how things work. And so he's kind of a nerd, who was built in a family.
Mommy.
Well, not in a bad way, but you do like to learn. You're smart, right, Wyatt?
Yeah.
Okay. And all my kids are smart. So I have 4 in school right now. They all love to learn. They all love to ask questions. They all like to talk about something. Can you turn that off if that's too loud? They all like to touch things. They all want to know how it works. They all want to explore new experiences. And so with that in mind, that kind of lends towards, 21st century learning. The generations now that they have access to what the world can be like off of the screen, now that they have access to, options and it's customizable, they don't even have to wait for commercials anymore. Everything is streamed. And so they're just in a fast-paced world where they have access to that readily. They're ready to, discover themselves and know how they fit into the picture. Now, with homeschooling, I can only offer that. If I homeschool just with my kids, I can only offer that within, this controlled community where I gave birth to them. But if I offer homeschooling options with other families, essentially a co-op was supposed to be that type of model. But the freedom of choice you want in a traditional homeschooling is the core academics. You want to do that at home. And the rest of the stuff, you get enrichment on with other families. Well, I come from public school. I sent my kids to private school, paid almost $5,000 a month because I want to trust somebody else to do that. In terms of core academics and enrichment, I want a place where I can trust them to educate my child. Well, a microschool is a model where you can do a hybrid of technology and in-person learning. Now, Wyatt, do you mind, buddy? Since we're on a video, it's either you can sit still or you can, go into the other room, okay? It's up to you. Okay, but as you notice, Wyatt is a very active learner. And so it gives us the freedom to homeschool where I want him to have the space for someone to give him choices and options and help support his actions and behavior. But I want to also educate him. And education now, I've been studying the research for 4 years, can kind of there's a lot of technology options, mostly AI generated. So with artificial intelligence, really, you can get a computer program to level your child both in reading and math. Writing is a little bit hard because a lot of that stuff has to be practiced and true, including handwriting. So there's some in-person learning that can't be done virtually. It has to have someone to support that kind of behavior and that practice. But a lot of the, reading and the math instruction can be hit with technology that levels your child, and there are enough videos and great teachers online that can teach your child more specifically. And if you look even in the private school and the public school sector, a lot of us still use those videos and those technology programs to enhance learning in the classroom. Well, now I'm going to put it in a smaller setting. So a microschool option is a homeschool option where families want the freedom of homeschool. They want less pressure. They want more flexibility because life is hard. So my husband works healthcare. To afford the private school, was a full-time teacher, but I did some side hustles. So I tutored, I did, PD training. And the whole reason of me getting my doctoral degree is so that I could be a valid expert in the space. There have been a lot of times where I've been innovative and creative because I'm relationship-based. I target student needs very explicitly, and I delight in this job. I'm passionate about learning and teaching, and so I would pay for those trainings and PDs myself. And so I'm up to date with the research to meet student needs, and that always didn't make me feel good in the space. And so to provide this option actually gives me freedom as a teacher to teach and geek out the way I want to, but in a controlled setting. So in homeschooling, the freedom of choice by the state of Virginia, they give every family the option to choose how you school your child. It's a very simple process. You give a letter of a notice of intent. You tell them that you're going to homeschool the child. If you have a bachelor's degree, that qualifies you to be, fine. A high school, diploma. I'm not really sure about a high school diploma, but if you have a bachelor's degree, you are qualified to homeschool your child. And then you need to either take a testing or have an evaluation done at the end of the year. But if you're certified, there's an extra plus towards it. You don't have to do an evaluation, because you're certified enough to teach. Well, ding, 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 ding. There is the loophole of freedom. So now after COVID, because we realize it's not that I have a problem with public school teaching. I have no problem with a classroom model, no problem with a teacher and a student model. I have no problem about the functions of an actual school, because the private schools are essentially a more personalized version or a smaller community of the public school model, which is all traditional teaching. But for me, what I have a problem for right now is that the schools are just as flooded as all the mental health professionals in the area in terms of providing a school option that caters to the social, emotional, and intellectual growth of children. Because the largest gaps aren't just academic gaps that came from COVID. It's the fact that our kids were isolated from developmental, social, and emotional regulation experiences for about almost 2 years. And so my eldest is going to 5th grade next year, but she was in kindergarten when COVID happened and the closure happened. And my youngest, I actually gave birth to him in 2020. I gave birth to him and was virtual teaching. So under tremendous stress, because even after I gave birth to him, I never went back to the doctor because I could never find enough childcare for me to go back after I gave labor to him. So crisis living, there was a period of crisis living there, but then because of crisis living, the world is changing where we're providing more options so that education can be equitably met through multiple options to, basically help cover the collective need, all communities need for our children to receive an education despite some of their deficits. And so as a mom, I'm all for it. I could have the option of sending my one child or homeschooling just my one child and keeping my kids in private school, but at the same time, I think that's really divisive for my family. And 2, at private school, there's only so much they can offer in terms of 21st century academics. My kids are really smart, so they're in the advanced classes, but that offering is only in 1 hour of the day. The rest of it is not so advanced. It's textbook learning. And after reading the research for the last 4 years, I don't really give in to textbook curriculum. There's so many resources out there right now that even are free that will prepare my kids for the 21st century job force more than any textbook curriculum out there. So educational options to me, as I had told you, is literally, to me, it looks like being in the kitchen. And so I pulled out, vinegars that I use with my recipes that coexist, but for different purposes and for different meals. And so I consider the meals kind of like your students or even your families sometimes. But this one I use when I do pork chops and I make balsamic brown sugar glaze. This one I use when we're making barbecue sauce. This one I use specifically for Filipino adobo. This one I acquired because I tried a recipe that I was unfamiliar with. But, I go down the grocery aisle and the options, they keep on coming, So these are pretty much vinegar options that have been there for a while, but they're used for different purposes. They coexist, and they're completely okay coexisting. And, as a community, at least in this family, I'm thankful they all coexist because I use them for different purposes. And they coexist because they work for different dishes. Well, that's why educational options coexist, because there are different families, there are different students who need the need. And as the needs kind of uncover itself and there's not enough resources out there to meet the need, it's important that we let coexistence happen and it's peaceful. Now, the other place I see this the most is consider public school assault You know, everybody uses salt. It's more like table salt, and this is like kosher salt. We use sea salt so much in everything that we actually ran out, and I have to get some from the store. But I mean, public school option or salt is readily available to anyone. Okay, and usually the table salt is what you find out the most. You know, works just fine. But if you want, you know, to kind of up it a little bit more, you know, you can always get kosher salt. But there are specialized public school programs out there that are available for everyone. Like there's K-12, which is online public school. Even my local public school offers a virtual academy too. And sometimes there's homebound options where you'll do a little virtual, you know, or someone will come out to you in person. It doesn't matter. But all of us are kind of, you know, in this space where as problems exist and needs arise, we are kind of innovating new pathways to meet the need. Now, a micro school for me is kind of where I combine a little bit of my table salt with a little bit of my barbecue sometimes. And then sometimes, only because I want something with more access, kind of very much to public school, because public school can meet anybody's needs. Like, everybody's welcome. I kind of want that inclusivity. But then in, you know, the private school sector too, like there's a certain goals or academics that I want to hit. And so in terms of academics, I am very interested in giving kids that personalized core academics, so reading, math, and writing instruction they need, the foundations they need to, you know, equip them towards like real life learning. So for me, foundations is key. I find too many kids in the classroom are not getting those foundational skills of literacy and math and writing, that they're relying on Siri or they're relying on talk to text to communicate for them. And that reliance really kind of makes me sad, because if they're relying at it now when they're this young, they're going to be relying on it forever. And they're better than that. And so I want something that's, you know, going to marinate and get that good old barbecue that's been there for a while, because foundations of, you know, reading, math, and writing have been there forever as, you know, just a powerful source of survival and independence. I want to mix that with the access, and I guess maybe I want to put some kosher salt in there, because I also don't want to limit the flavor. So kosher salt is a stronger salt, and so if you want to use it, we use it a lot in meat. I don't want to limit the flavor, or even as they go into their foundations, I want them to take it wherever they go. So I don't want to limit them by grade level. I don't want to limit them by standards. I want to know how the standards align so that they can reach their full potential. But then at the same time, you know, when we want to make a switch, when I don't want to do barbecue anymore, and I want to cook some pork chops, maybe I'm going to go ahead and put some balsamic vinegar in there, because I want to do some pork chops with some brown sugar, which is more of like a specialty. It's like a quick, you know, saute in the pan sort of meal. But once I make it, it hits a completely different palate in my mouth. It's a completely different dish, so it's not slow cooked barbecue. It is more about that experience, you know, that one meal experience where I remember this dish and it makes me think of, well, that to me, I'm going to take my learning to a new level where I can make alternative decisions based by what I know and apply it to other aspects of the real world. And so for me, balsamic vinegar and cooking my pork chops is where like 3rd and 5th grade are. I'm ready to make more of a decision in where I want to take my learning. I want to apply it in real world settings, but with my own flair. And so that's mastery methods for me when it comes to my micro school. Mastery methods for me is, you know, when they apply the foundations they learn to acquire new learning, to test and understand their world and their community a little bit more, but test their own, you know, learning and their own capabilities and challenge themselves. So By 3rd through 5th, if they're in mastery methods, learning to them is kind of a superpower. By then, they developed a love for learning, but also a confidence and efficacy behind it, that they are ready to take on the world and to do things more independently. That's where you want them to be when they're in middle school. So by middle school, they're going to be changing classes. They're going to be in different leveled classes to different courses. They're going to have to manage that. And then on top of that, they're going to want to express themselves. Middle schoolers want to be known and seen. And to do that, they're going to have to be able to explore their own interests. They've got the time, especially if they're smart. They really, really got the time. It's about channeling that time towards things that are productive, things that are character building. And so for me, in my microschool, I'm leaving room for middle schoolers to transition to online learning. So they'll have multiple courses, multiple teachers. So they'll have a piece of a little independence in that learning. And it's important that they understand that they have to manage multiple academic goals. But their time, I want their time also to be managed where they're investing back into a younger generation community. So being the older ones in the school makes them automatic influencers. And so as an influencer, I want them to use their power for good, not evil. And so I'll channel that by giving them roles and positions in the school to learn what entrepreneurship is, but also their enrichment will be interest-based. So I'll give them time in their school day where they'll actually get to explore one of their own personal interests in a controlled environment. So I will be coaching them for instruction, but also coaching them with life skills and personal development. So educational options can exist. This kind of picture of all these ingredients is me kind of being like a public-private, school option. I can offer a lot of the things that the public schools can offers. Like I'm a public schools teacher through and through. So the whole thing about being inclusive, that, all people can have access. I give permission to all people to have access to my school. Because I'm relationship based and because we're smaller, it just lends to more social development, more emotional development on top of high levels of academics. Because we are a small community, the teachers that I hire and even myself are in this option because I'm done being the mom where I realize my kids are really smart, but they don't fit in. And I also don't want to grow my kids where I know they're smart, but they can't fit in because they're smart. And they start dumbing themselves down socially because they don't have, my son describes it as like, nobody understands me. And to me, that's sad. Well, then maybe I need to provide a community for him where he can be smart and seen as being smart, but it not being something that socially depletes him, I'm in a Young Life community now with Grassfield High School students who I know they're wicked smart, dude. But it's fun that they go to a school where that's kind of the norm. A lot of people are smart at that school. I want to create that for my own kids, on a younger level because they're smart for a reason and I don't want them to hide it. But we're a homeschool option nonetheless. But this homeschool option is way different than your traditional homeschool option because I want the freedom of choice, for my family and for my kids. And providing this community can help my kids feel known and seen through their academics, but also because they feel known and seen with their academics, they can be free to socialize and learn skills with other kids who are there for the right reasons. But also emotionally, you don't get to work on your emotions unless you're in a social setting. Most people don't understand that. Like they think, you just go to a counselor, you talk about your feelings. Well, most of your feelings don't come out until you're in a social setting. So if you're isolated all the time, you're not really addressing your emotions. If you're picking your own environments and you're not integrating into, social environments where you're forced to work with other people, you're not going to know the emotional deficits within you exist. So with that in mind, I have to provide a safe environment where kids can express themselves emotionally and learn how to kind of manage that. In a social environment that loves them, accepts them, and is willing to repair the harm which means willing to forgive them, if they did something wrong to them. Because most of the time, it's not like they meant to do the wrong. They just can't control themselves. But that could be something you say that's really dumb. That could be, even if it wasn't even about the kid, that could be you talking about a topic they're uncomfortable. You never know what social triggers other people have around you, but it's important to kind of build that social awareness while they're kids. And if we can build that social awareness while they're kids and help them self-regulate, and build people up, they're going to be powerful community members and citizens of this world. So that's the whole point of educational choice and this option. And that's why I'm doing this demonstration today. All right, bye.